Hello and welcome to World of Sport on the 18th of January, a Thursday, and a cold Thursday again. And because of that, the horse racing has been decimated this year, unless it's the old weather. That's old weather I would have very little interest in. Doesn't seem to, the form never seems to stack up as much as it does on the turf, so I don't have that much interest in it. Sports-wise again, yeah, there's bits and pieces. My sumo guy, Hoshuru, lost his first one today, so he's down to 4-1. Still a long way to go, so we won't be panicking just yet. The Australian tennis, of course, is going on, and I think it was more or less ladies' day today, and I just spotted one result and had a look at it. Quite a good match. For a change, I wouldn't, as I've said before, I wouldn't be a huge fan of women's tennis. There hasn't been any great rivalries for a long time now, and basically a different girl is winning each Grand Slam, and there's no really outstanding player at the moment, and a lot of them have unpronounceable names from Eastern Europe or further away. But there was one match today in the second round where Miss Rybakina, was the third seed, was playing Miss Blinkova, and it finished 4-6, 6-4, 6-7. So Blinkova beat the third seed, and yeah, you're saying that's great result for her. But the really interesting part of it was the tie break in the third set, which Blinkova won 22-20. I'm not sure if that's a record, but I guess it's close to it. As anyone knows, first to 7 usually gets there, and you might get to 8 or to 10, but 22-20, and looking at some really good play there, and both girls giving it everything, which is good to see. So that's a positive. Other than that, then I'd say, trying to get through my sports and say a few words about rugby. I'm not sure if I've covered it in an earlier cast, but some of my thoughts on, as we know at the moment, the Heineken Cup's on here in Europe, and again, like last year, the year before, Leinster looked tremendously strong, as in, people were saying an Irish guy would be crazy about Leinster being so strong, but I've never been fond of Leinster. Tend to have all the Irish players, a lot of strength there, but tend to blow up. And La Rochelle from France has been their nemesis over the last few seasons, and unfortunately for them, La Rochelle is coached by Ronan O'Gara, another Irish player who's from Munster, so they were always big rivals. So O'Gara has done tremendously well as a coach. He's just there a couple of years, but he's really done well. A great character. Sure, I don't think everybody crazy about him, but who cares? He's a good guy, and he's done so well. Sometimes it takes coaches 10 years to get to that kind of peak. Or some coaches have never actually won the Heineken Cup. I think he's won it twice now, so it's not bad going. For a small club as well in France, wouldn't be well known. You'd be thinking of the likes of Toulouse or Toulon or Perpignan or somebody like that, but La Rochelle, say 10 years ago, wouldn't have been the biggest of clubs by any means. So that's a good news story. Overall, then, we'll have the Six Nations coming up, and I guess for Ireland it's going to be a bit of a downer because of the performance in the World Cup. I mean, but I was saying coming in, we were number one in the world and everything was going on about it, but it's easy to win games that don't matter, and it's like any sport, any point. The more important a point, the more important the game, the harder it is to win. And it's such a thing as choking. I think the Americans say we're choking, and I think the Irish rugby team tends to choke, as they did after beating South Africa, the eventual winners this last year, as it is now, looking really good. Then they come up against their nemesis, as in New Zealand, the All Blacks, in the quarter final, and the All Blacks win by 4 points, but it was more than that in it. I don't know the terrible amount about rugby, but I felt the Irish performance in the line out. I couldn't understand it. because they weren't battling for the All Blacks ball. They were basically giving the All Blacks a free ball in the line. Whereas at the other side, when it was the Irish ball being thrown in, the All Blacks were doing everything they could to disrupt it, and I think that was one of the key points. But the fact is that I think, oh man, looking back with two players, I think Aki, who got the great try, and the fullback Hansen were the only Irish players who performed to top level, and yet New Zealand only won by 4 points. So there's a story in that, and maybe a little bit better, maybe, but it's always maybe with the Irish. I was pleased to see South Africa as well um, winning the World Cup because I like their toughness. They're not always the greatest team, but my God, they'll never lie down, and England had them beaten semi final, I guess, but again they just kept going and going, and eventually they'll grind out a win. And they have a bit of class as well, of course. They're not short of that, so no harm with that. I was disappointed, of course, as well to see France, who I always love. I love French rugby. To see French rugby is the Brazil, like Brazilian soccer, just the way they play, and well worth watching always, or used to be anyway. I guess with the modern professional game, that's probably been toned down. People won't take as many chances as they used to, but unfortunately they had a few injuries, and Dupont wasn't as allowed to do what he wants to do, and it was, I think, a point in it at the end against South Africa, and it all came down to probably my favourite player at the moment, Chelsea Kobe, for everybody. But man, I've been looking at him, and 4 years ago in Japan when he got that fabulous try at the end against England in the final, and against France he charged. I've never seen it happening before. He charged on a conversion, so saved 2 points, and South Africa won by 1 point. So it goes down to those margins sometimes. So and you'll probably see is South Africa being lucky, but they've been lucky a lot, and you don't get that lucky if you're not good. And they are the toughest side I've seen, and I'd never have that much sympathy for New Zealand, who seem to have all the players, all the class, and everything else. But when it's on the line, we see who is the best. Anyway, that's enough meandering about rugby, and hopefully we'll talk tomorrow when there'll be a bit more news. But there's, sadly, from what I can see, the big horse racing at the weekend at Ascot has already been called off, and you had a kind of a race between the two huge rivals, John Bunn and El Fabliola, and people are looking forward to that, but are probably going to have to wait till Cheltenham now, maybe everything else as well. So anyway, good night and thanks for listening.